Hello, and welcome to Knowledge to Fall Asleep. I'm genuinely glad you found your way here. Tonight, wherever you are in the world, let this be your permission to slow down. Let the day's noise soften at the edges. Let your screen become a dim little shoreline. Let your thoughts settle, the way leaves settle on still water, one by one, without being chased. We're staying on Earth tonight. Not the Earth of headlines and hurry, but the quiet, astonishing Earth that keeps doing impossible things when no one is watching. A planet where oceans can glow like spilled starlight. Where a jellyfish can rewrite its own timeline. Where forests trade messages underground. Where life, in its smallest forms, can endure cold, heat, radiation, even the vacuum between worlds. Some of what you hear may gently change the way you look at everything. Other discoveries might pass through you like a strange, peaceful dream, soft, subtle, and somehow unforgettable. If these calm wonders help you breathe easier or wake up a small spark of curiosity, consider tapping like and subscribe. It helps more tired minds find this quiet place, one person at a time. Now get comfortable, take one slow, deep breath, and let's begin. Unhurried, steady, and wonderfully small. The jellyfish that can reverse time in warm coastal waters near the Mediterranean and across oceans worldwide. There drifts a creature that seems to ignore one of nature's strictest rules. You don't get to go back. Its name is Turritopsis dohrnii, often called the immortal jellyfish. When it's injured, stressed, or simply reaching the end of its life, it can do something almost mythic. It can return to an earlier stage of itself, folding back into a polyp form like a butterfly, turning back into a caterpillar, then starting its life cycle again. This isn't a bedtime legend. Scientists have watched it happen in laboratories. It can repeat its life stages again and again, almost indefinitely, unless something outside ends it first. It isn't a key to human immortality, but it is a quiet reminder. Nature's imagination is usually bigger than ours. Somewhere in the sea, time can be rewound, not once, but over and over, in complete silence. Trees whisper through an underground network. In the stillness of a forest, there's a conversation happening beneath your feet. Old trees, once thought to be solitary giants, are connected by a living web of fungi in the soil. This partnership is called mycorrhizae. Through thread-thin fungal strands, trees can share nutrients, send chemical signals, and even warn one another about pests, disease, or drought. Some older trees, sometimes called mother trees, can even send sugars and other support to younger seedlings through this network. It's not metaphor. It's biology on a scale so vast and intricate that many researchers gave it a name that sounds like a secret joke from the universe: the Wood Wide Web. A birch can help a neighbor. A dying tree can pass along its last reserves. Not kindness, not intention in the human sense, yet the result looks like cooperation anyway. In that dark world of roots and fungus, the forest isn't just a crowd of individuals, it's a community. Water bears that can survive outer space. Now let's meet one of Earth's smallest champions. Tardigrades, or often nicknamed water bears, are microscopic animals, usually less than a millimeter long, little wrinkled, eight-legged blobs that look like gummy bears under a microscope. But don't let their size fool you. They can survive extremes that would destroy most life. Near absolute cold, boiling heat, crushing pressure, dehydration, intense radiation, and even the vacuum of space. In 2007, Scientists exposed tardigrades to space conditions in orbit, and some survived and returned. They do it by entering a special suspended state. Their bodies dry down. Their metabolism drops to almost nothing. They don't exactly die. They wait. And when water returns, they wake up, as if the universe only paused for a moment. Tardigrades are proof that life can be stranger, tougher, and more patient than we ever assumed, even when drifting between the stars. Oxygen used to be deadly poison. Every breath you take feels like the most ordinary thing in the world. But long ago, oxygen was a catastrophe. More than 2 billion years ago, early microbial life thrived in an atmosphere with little to no oxygen. Many of those organisms were anaerobic, meaning oxygen wasn't helpful to them. It was lethal. Then, cyanobacteria, tiny photosynthetic microbes, began releasing oxygen as a byproduct. At first, it was small, almost unnoticeable. But across immense stretches of time, oxygen built up in the oceans and air, triggering what scientists call the Great Oxidation Event. For countless anaerobic organisms, oxygen was toxic. It damaged cells, broke ancient metabolic systems, and contributed to a massive die-off. Yet for life that adapted, oxygen became a new source of energy, and eventually a doorway into complex life. So in a strange way, the breath that sustains you is also a fossil from an ancient extinction. Oxygen didn't simply bring life. Its history is written into every inhale. Plants that hunt. We imagine plants as gentle, passive green things, quietly drinking sunlight. But some plants don't wait for nutrients. Some hunt. Carnivorous plants like the Venus flytrap, pitcher plants, and sundews lure insects with sweet scents and sticky nectar, then trap them, hold them, and digest them. The Venus flytrap can even count touches, closing only when it receives enough signals to know it's worth the effort. Pitcher plants shape slippery wells filled with digestive enzymes. Sundews sparkle with tiny glue-like droplets, then slowly curl around prey like patient, sticky fingers. Why do they do it? Or because they live in nutrient-poor soils where nitrogen is scarce. So they adapted, not with teeth or claws, but with design and patience. A quiet reminder, life survives in many forms, and even the softest leaf can hide a silent hunger. Every leaf is a masterpiece. Hold a leaf up to the light and you'll see a small miracle. A leaf feels delicate, but it's an engineered system, built with microscopic precision. Inside are vein networks like branching rivers, delivering water and minerals, carrying sugars, supporting photosynthesis. On the surface are tiny openings called stomata, which open and close to manage carbon dioxide and oxygen exchange. Chlorophyll turns sunlight into usable energy, not only for the plant, but for much of life on Earth. Some leaves track the sun, some repel water, some trap insects, some store heat. No two leaves are truly identical, not in shape, not in function, not in the way they solve the problem of living. A thin green sheet, trembling in air, doing chemistry that feeds the world. Oceans that glow in the dark. Imagine walking along a quiet beach at night and watching the waves shine blue. It's real. This glow comes from bioluminescent plankton. When disturbed by waves, a swimmer's hand, even footsteps in shallow water, they emit cold light through a chemical reaction inside their bodies, like fireflies, but underwater. Places like Mosquito Bay in Puerto Rico or some shores of the Maldives can become luminous, as if the sea is holding a secret festival of stars. No electricity, No magic, just biology. Bioluminescence evolved many times in the ocean, used for camouflage, communication, and confusing predators. And in the darkest water, life still finds a way to shine. You are an ecosystem, not a single being. You feel like one person, one body, one mind. But in reality, you are a living community. On your skin, in your mouth, and deep in your gut, trillions of microbes live with you. Bacteria, viruses, fungi, and more. This is your microbiome. And it doesn't merely exist. It helps digest food, trains your immune system, produces vitamins, and can influence mood and behavior. In many ways, it's an extension of nature's intelligence inside you, an invisible partner woven into daily life. So the next time you feel lonely, remember, you are never truly alone. You are a walking ecosystem, a world inside a world, ants that build bridges out of themselves. In South American forests, army ants move like a living river. And when that river meets a gap, it doesn't stop. It becomes architecture. One ant grips a branch, another climbs onto its back, then another, then more, until a living bridge forms, flexible and strong. Thousands of ants link together, adjusting in real time, redistributing their bodies to support the flow above. When the colony has passed, the bridge dissolves and the living river continues. No leader orders it. It emerges from countless small choices, each ant responding to the ones beside it, guided by instinct and contact. That's collective intelligence, a shape made entirely of life. Octopuses can edit their own RNA. In the quiet heart of the ocean, an octopus drifts like a waking dream. It reshapes itself. It becomes stone, then sand, then shadow. It changes color with the softness of a thought, and it watches with eyes that feel borrowed from some other world. We already know it's among the most intelligent animals on Earth, but what hides beneath that intelligence is even stranger. An octopus can rewrite parts of its RNA. RNA is like a working copy, a messenger that carries instructions from DNA to build proteins. Most animals live by a relatively fixed script. The genes you inherit are the genes you express, more or less, with only limited adjustment. But octopuses have a rare ability to edit that messenger in real time, altering how certain genes are expressed without changing the DNA itself. That means they can fine-tune their biology on the fly. They can adjust how nerve cells communicate, how the body senses the world, how tissues respond to temperature, stress, and shifting environments. It's not immortality, it's not magic, but it is a kind of biological improvisation, a living system that can tweak its own settings as it goes. We still don't fully understand how or why this editing happens so extensively in octopuses. And that uncertainty makes the animal feel even more like a puzzle the ocean keeps to itself. As if the sea, patient and deep, is holding a private riddle in moving flesh. Some animals may recognize themselves. Many creatures can notice a reflection. Very few realize that the image is me. Self-recognition is rare in nature, and it's often treated as a sign of higher awareness. One famous way to explore it is the mirror test. A small mark is placed on an animal somewhere it cannot see without a mirror. If the animal looks into the mirror and then tries to touch or investigate the mark on its own body, it suggests something quietly profound. It understands that the reflection is itself. Only a handful of species have shown strong evidence in these kinds of tests, including some great apes dolphins, elephants, magpies, and possibly manta rays. This doesn't mean they think like humans. It doesn't prove a human-style consciousness. But it opens a door. It hints that awareness may not belong to us alone, that the boundary between self and other in the living world may be softer than we once believed. Life has survived 5 mass extinctions. Earth's story is ancient, and its resilience is almost impossible to fully hold in the mind. Over the last roughly 500 million years, the planet has endured at least 5 major mass extinctions, each one wiping out a vast portion of the species alive at the time. The most catastrophic of them all, the Permian extinction, erased more than 90% of marine life and the majority of species on land. Worlds ended, ecosystems collapsed, the familiar became dust, and yet life returned. Not the same life, not the same shapes, but something new, built from the small survivors and the strange opportunities left behind. From the ash of disaster, evolution began writing again. That's the quiet endurance of biology. Life doesn't merely cling on, it adapts, it reinvents, it becomes something else. And we, breathing here tonight, are part of that long, unbroken rebuilding. Fungi can control insect behavior in the damp shade of forests. A kind of haunting theater plays out, blurring the line between creature and controller. Certain parasitic fungi, like Ophiocordyceps, can infect ants, spread through their bodies, and release chemicals that alter behavior. The ant becomes restless, compelled. It climbs upward, higher than it normally would, and clamps down onto a leaf or stem with an unnaturally final grip. Then it stops. The fungus kills its host, grows out from the body, and releases spores that rain down to infect others below. Scientists still don't fully understand how the fungus manipulates the nervous system so effectively, but in this silent biological war, even the smallest organisms can wield astonishing power. The forest is not only green and peaceful, it's full of hidden strategies, some elegant, some unsettling. True blue is rare in nature. You see blue everywhere, the sky, the sea, butterfly wings, bird feathers. But in living things, true blue pigment is surprisingly uncommon. Many creatures that appear blue, blue jays, morpho butterflies, alder peacocks, often don't contain blue pigment at all. Instead, their blue is created by structure. Microscopic patterns on feathers or scales bend and scatter light, reflecting mostly blue wavelengths back to your eyes. It's called structural color, a visual illusion born from shape rather than dye. Because true blue pigments are difficult for organisms to produce, every flash of blue in the wild can feel like a small collaboration between physics and biology. A color built out of architecture. Elephants mourn their dead. On the open savanna, elephants do something that feels uncomfortably familiar. They grieve. When elephants encounter the bones of a known individual, they often slow down. They reach out with their trunks. They stand quietly, sometimes for a long time. Some have been observed returning to the same remains years later, gently touching and examining them again. There are accounts of elephants staying near dying companions, lingering close, refusing to leave. Their sorrow may not be identical to ours, but it seems deep. Elephants, remember, they bond to family, they carry emotional weight. It's humbling to realize that compassion, loss, and love may not be human property. They may be older than us, woven into life itself. Coral reefs are built by animal architects. Coral reefs are among the most vibrant ecosystems on Earth, yet they are not made by plants or inert rock. They are built by animals. Each reef begins with countless tiny creatures called polyps. They catch plankton with delicate tentacles and build homes by secreting calcium carbonate, creating hard skeletons that stack and accumulate over time. Slowly, patiently, generation after generation, the reef becomes a vast underwater structure, sometimes stretching for hundreds of miles. Inside these living cities, life explodes. Fish, crustaceans, mollusks, sea turtles, and countless other species. Though reefs cover less than 1% of the ocean floor, they shelter roughly a quarter of marine life. A metropolis made by millions of invisible builders. Quiet, persistent, miraculous. Slime molds can solve mazes without a brain. A slime mold is a strange, often single-celled organism found in damp soil and rotting wood. It has no brain, no nerves, no central command. And yet, in maze experiments, slime molds can find an efficient path between two food sources. They spread outward in all directions, then gradually withdraw, leaving behind the most effective route. It doesn't think the way we do, but somehow, through chemical signals and environmental feedback, it arrives at a solution, a kind of distributed intelligence living in the body itself, a reminder that intelligence can exist in many forms. It does not always require a brain. Sometimes it is simply the ability to learn from the world, slowly and silently, with the whole self. The Amazon rainforest helps make its own rain. The Amazon doesn't only receive rainfall, it helps create it. Each day, as sunlight warms the canopy, billions of trees release moisture into the air through transpiration. Water vapor rises, cools, condenses into clouds, and falls again as rain, feeding the forest below. This cycle is so immense that the Amazon generates much of its own weather and influences climate across the region. When deforestation or fires break parts of this cycle, the system weakens. Rain decreases, drought risk rises. The Amazon is often called the lungs of the earth, but you can also imagine it as a heart of the South American sky, pumping moisture and life into the air. Some frogs can freeze solid and survive. In North America, the wood frog can survive being frozen for days, sometimes weeks. Its heart stops. Many bodily functions pause. The body becomes rigid, locked in ice. But natural antifreeze compounds protect its cells from bursting. When spring arrives and temperatures rise, the ice melts, the heart begins again, and the frog wakes and hops away as if nothing happened. Whales can sing across oceans. In the deep sea, melodies travel through darkness. The calls of blue whales can carry for hundreds, even thousands of miles underwater. These low-frequency sounds help with navigation, communication, and finding mates. Different groups can have distinct dialects, and whale songs can change over time like living traditions passed from one generation to the next. Seeds can sleep for thousands of years. Seeds are tiny time travelers. Inside a small shell is a blueprint for life, sealed with astonishing patience. In one famous case, ancient date palm seeds around 2,000 years old were recovered from archaeological sites and successfully germinated in modern times. They slept through empires, wars, harvests, and long silence. Then, with warmth and water, they woke up and grew. Bioluminescence evolved again and again. Bioluminescence is not a single invention. Life discovered it repeatedly, dozens of times across evolution. Fireflies, glowing plankton, deep-sea anglerfish, light created through chemical reactions, often involving luciferin and the enzyme luciferase, releasing energy as visible glow, a language of light that nature has rewritten in caves, on waves, and in the deepest ocean night. Your bones are made of stardust. This isn't only poetry, it's physics. The calcium in your bones, the iron in your blood, the carbon in your cells were forged inside ancient stars. When those stars died, they scattered their elements through supernova explosions, mixing into clouds of gas and dust, forming planets, oceans, and eventually living bodies. You don't merely live in the universe. In a very real sense, you are the universe arranged into a shape that can breathe and wonder. Some insects can see ultraviolet. Bees can see patterns on flowers that human eyes cannot. Many blossoms have ultraviolet markings, hidden guides that point toward nectar like luminous runway lights. It's an evolutionary partnership. The flower gets pollinated, the bee gets fed. A parallel visual world exists right beside ours, and we walk through it without seeing. Kangaroos can pause embryo development. In harsh conditions, female kangaroos can delay the development of a fertilized embryo, a phenomenon called embryonic diapause. It allows the body to wait for a safer, more favorable time to continue pregnancy, a quiet survival strategy shaped by unpredictable environments. Some fish can change sex. Clownfish live in a hierarchy. The largest is female. If the female dies, the dominant male changes sex and becomes the new female. In other species like wrasses, females can become males if the dominant male disappears. Hormones shift, organs restructure, roles reverse. In the ocean, identity can be more flexible than we imagine. If you want, I can continue from here in the same sleepy narration tone and weave these facts into smoother transitions, with gentle breathing cues and soft drift phrases, so it feels like one continuous bedtime documentary. Birds can navigate using Earth's magnetic field. Some migratory birds carry a compass you can't see. Inside their bodies are biological structures that appear to sense magnetism, tiny magnetite crystals in certain tissues, and light-sensitive proteins in the eyes that may help translate magnetic information into something the brain can interpret. This magnetic sense doesn't replace the sun, the stars, or familiar landmarks. It blends with them. A layered guidance system, a quiet, invisible map etched into nerves and instinct, pointing north even when the sky is blank. Earth breathes through the carbon cycle. Carbon is always moving, from air to ocean, from ocean to living tissue, from living tissue back into the soil. You exhale carbon dioxide. Plants inhale it and turn it into leaves, bark, fruit, and roots. Animals eat those plants. Microbes return the leftovers to the ground. Volcanoes release carbon from deep time. The ocean absorbs it, stores it, circulates it. Some carbon becomes rock. Some becomes fossil fuels. Some remain suspended in the atmosphere like a thin, invisible veil. Over long time scales, this cycle helps steady climate like a slow heartbeat. And right now, that heartbeat is being pushed off rhythm by human activity. Too much carbon, too quickly, released faster than Earth can calmly rebalance. Stromatolites are ancient stone buildings made by microbes, long before forests, long before animals, long before the oxygen we rely on. Microscopic life was already shaping the planet. Stromatolites are layered rock formations built by microbial communities, especially cyanobacteria, through patient repetition, trapping sediment, forming mats, stacking time into stone. Some stromatolite fossils are more than 3.5 billion years old, among the earliest evidence we have of life on Earth. And in a few places, stromatolites still live. In places like Shark Bay in Australia, you can still find these slow builders working without tools, without eyes, without hurry. The first engineers of Earth, powered by sunlight and endurance. Dolphins appear to have individual names. Under the waves, identity can be carried by sound. Dolphins communicate with clicks and whistles, and many develop a unique whistle pattern, often called a signature whistle, that functions like a personal label. Other dolphins can learn it and use it to call the right individual. In playback experiments, when researchers play a dolphin signature whistle, that dolphin may respond as if it just heard itself being addressed. A name not written in ink, but written in air and water pressure. A social self echoing through the sea. The Sahara was once green. It's easy to think of the Sahara as eternal sand, but the desert is also a memory. Roughly 6,000 to 8,000 years ago, parts of the Sahara had regular rain, lakes and rivers, grasslands, large animals. This period is often called the African humid period. It linked to subtle shifts in Earth's orbit that changed monsoon patterns. Then the rains faded, the green withdrew, and the desert returned. The Sahara is not only a place, it is a reminder that climate can reshape worlds, that landscapes can change so completely they look like different planets. Bees can grasp the idea of zero. Intelligence does not always scale with brain size. In experiments, bees can be trained to choose the smaller number of shapes to receive a reward. When presented with an empty card, nothing at all, bees can sometimes choose it correctly as less than one. That suggests they can handle a surprisingly abstract concept, the absence of something, not philosophy, not math homework, but a real mental step. Nothing is a quantity too. Wolves changed the shape of rivers in Yellowstone. When wolves were reintroduced to Yellowstone in the 1990s, they didn't only change prey numbers, they changed behavior. Elk and deer moved differently, avoided certain areas, stopped lingering as long along riverbanks. Vegetation began to recover. Willow and aspen returned in places where they'd been overgrazed. Birds came back. Beavers found building material again and raised dams. Banks stabilized. Erosion decreased. In some areas, river channels became narrower and more stable. This chain reaction is often described as a trophic cascade, a powerful illustration of how one species can tug the threads of an ecosystem and how the whole tapestry shifts. Flowers may hear the buzz of bees. A garden is not silent. It's full of soft conversations. Some research suggests that when flowers detect the vibrations of bee wing beats nearby, they may increase nectar production within minutes. Flowers have no ears, but petals can vibrate like tiny sensors tuned to particular frequencies. The bee approaches, the flower responds. A dialogue written in tremors and sweetness. Lichens are two lives living as one. A lichen is not a single organism, it's a partnership. Typically, it's a fungus joined with an alga or cyanobacterium. The fungus provides structure and protection, a shelter against harshness. The photosynthetic partner creates food from light. Together, they can survive where neither could thrive alone, on bare rock, tree bark, wind-swept cliffs. A fused existence, a living agreement, painted across stone. Naked mole rats seem to age differently. They look like wrinkled little beings from underground mythology, yet they can live far longer than most rodents. They tolerate low oxygen environments. They show unusual resistance to cancer. Their biology stays remarkably stable over time. Scientists study them for clues about aging, resilience, and cellular repair. The naked mole rat is a reminder that normal is not a rule in nature, only a habit we're used to seeing. The human body contains around 30 trillion cells. Every breath you take is the work of countless tiny cooperators. Muscle cells contract. Neurons fire sparks of signal. Red blood cells carry oxygen like couriers. Immune cells patrol. Skin renews itself. Blood replaces itself. Day by day, you rebuild yourself in small portions, like a city under constant quiet renovation. You are not one fixed thing. You are a living symphony of coordination, a collaboration so steady you rarely notice it happening. Some parrots are astonishingly smart. Evolution doesn't build intelligence along a single road. Certain parrots, like African gray parrots, can learn complex associations, colors, shapes, quantities, and can solve challenging cognitive tasks. They show memory, problem solving, and social awareness that can feel almost uncannily thoughtful. It's a gentle reminder that intelligence can bloom in many forms, in many minds, not only those that resemble ours. The oceans hold most of Earth's living abundance. More than 70% of Earth's surface is ocean, and within it is a massive share of the planet's biomass. From plankton to whales, from coral gardens to the trenches of the deep sea. We've explored only a small fraction of those depths. The world beneath the waves is not empty. It is crowded with life, layered with motion, and filled with mysteries that do not care whether we are watching. A single tree can be an entire forest. In Utah, there is a famous grove of quaking aspen called Pando. It looks like many trees, but many scientists consider it one organism. Countless trunks connected by one shared root system, a clonal colony spread across a vast area. A forest that may be one life, wearing many bodies. A reminder that individuality in nature can be stranger than it seems. Some viruses can be beneficial. Not all viruses are simple villains. Some help regulate microbial ecosystems. Some influence gene expression. And a notable portion of the human genome contains remnants of ancient viral DNA, old genetic echoes recorded through evolution. Viruses aren't only invaders. Sometimes they become part of the story, are woven into the long history of life and change. Sharks are older than trees. Sharks have existed for over 400 million years, older than forests as we know them. They survived multiple mass extinctions and retained a remarkably effective body plan through deep time. An ancient lineage, a design that worked so well nature kept it. Rainforests help shape weather. Healthy forests pull water up through roots and release it through leaves. That moisture can rise, condense, form clouds, and fall again as rain. Forests can help maintain the climate patterns that sustain them. When forests are lost, the cycle weakens. Moisture decreases. Rain can decline. Systems shift. A forest is not only trees, it is a climate engine. Decorator crabs wear their environment. Some crabs collect algae, seaweed, even living sponges. Oh, and attach them to their shells using tiny hooked hairs. It's camouflage. Sometimes it's chemical defense, if the chosen sponge produces toxins. A creature carrying a wardrobe of its own habitat. A moving patch of seafloor, pretending to be nothing at all. Insects outnumber humans by a staggering margin. They are everywhere, pollinating, recycling nutrients, breaking down what dies, feeding what hunts. Much of the stability we take for granted rests on these small workers. The world stays smoother than we expect because tiny lives keep turning the gears. Birds of paradise perform elaborate dances. In New Guinea, birds of paradise wear feathers like living fireworks and court with choreography so precise it feels rehearsed. Each species has its own style, poses, steps, or displays, shaped by sexual selection and the wild creativity of evolution. Beauty has a language, movement as a message, a performance written into biology. Spider silk can be stronger than steel by weight. Spider silk is one of nature's extraordinary materials, strong, flexible, able to absorb huge amounts of energy. Scientists study it for medical and engineering uses. But out in the real world, spiders quietly spin these wonders nightly, with no lab, no blueprint, only the instructions of their bodies. A miracle you can walk past on a fence and never notice. Fireflies speak in light. Each species has its own rhythm, a pattern of flashes. Males signal while flying. Females answer from grass or branches, a courtship conversation written in pulses, both beautiful and exact. In darkness, life invents a way to talk. Some monkeys and apes appear to self-medicate. Certain primates seek out specific plants when ill, plants with antibacterial or antiparasitic compounds. This behavior is called zoopharmacognosy. It suggests that survival knowledge can exist outside humanity, a practical wisdom learned through bodies, through trial, through time. Phytoplankton produce much of the oxygen you breathe. Near the sunlit surface of the sea, microscopic phytoplankton photosynthesize, absorbing carbon dioxide and releasing oxygen. They form the foundation of marine food webs and influence Earth's atmosphere on a grand scale. When you inhale, remember that the ocean is breathing too through countless invisible lungs. Crows can plan ahead. Birds in the corvid family are known for problem-solving, tool use, memory, and flexible choices. Some studies suggest they can select rewards based on future needs, hinting at planning rather than pure impulse. A quiet intelligence, observant, patient, remembering more than you'd expect. Some snakes can see heat. Pit vipers, pythons, and boas have specialized organs, pit organs, that detect infrared radiation. They don't see warmth as a vague feeling. They map it like a thermal image in darkness, locating prey by body heat. In the night, the world becomes a landscape of temperature. The Arctic tundra blooms all at once. The summer is short, and so everything rushes. Plants flower quickly, intensely, then retreat again into the long quiet. A brief explosion of color and life. Then stillness returns. A rhythm older than memory. Bloom, fade, wait. There are fungi that turn ants into zombies. It sounds like fiction, but it's biology. Certain fungi can infect ants, alter behavior, and drive them to climb and clamp down before the fungus finishes its cycle. It's unsettling. It's also a reminder that nature isn't only gentle, it is strategic, it is relentless, and it is endlessly inventive. And if you notice how all of these wonders, magnetic maps, carbon breath, ancient microbial cities, singing whales, glowing insects, keep returning to the same theme. It's this: life is not one simple thing. It is a network of miracles layered on top of one another, quiet enough to let you sleep, and strange enough to make you look at the world differently the next time you wake. If you'd like, I can keep going in this same slow, soothing narration style and stitch the next facts into one continuous sleep science journey with gentle transitions and calming pauses. Sea cucumbers can turn their bodies soft, almost like jelly. In the hush of the sea floor, there are creatures that seem to melt on purpose. A sea cucumber can shift the stiffness of its body by rearranging proteins in its connective tissue, changing from firm to pliable when it needs to slip through narrow cracks. And some species have an even stranger escape plan. When threatened, they can eject their internal organs as a decoy, an offering meant to distract the predator, then over time, quietly regenerate what was lost. Not magic, just biology, patient and precise. Antarctic ice fish carry antifreeze in their blood. In water so cold, they seem made of glass. Some fish survive with chemistry that feels impossible. Ice fish produce antifreeze proteins that prevent ice crystals from growing inside their bodies. And many of them lack hemoglobin, the molecule that makes most blood red. Their blood can look pale, almost clear, with oxygen carried directly in the plasma. A strange solution for a world that should not forgive mistakes. Life, adapting in ways that don't ask for our permission to be real. Termites build cities with natural air conditioning. In hot landscapes where the air shimmers, termite mounds rise like quiet monuments. They are not random piles of dirt. They are engineered climates. Many mounds use passive ventilation, airflow shaped by heat and pressure differences, cycling warm air out and pulling cooler air in, keeping the inner nursery remarkably stable even when the world outside swings between scorching days and cool nights. No electricity, no blueprints, just millions of small decisions turning into architecture. Some lizards can squirt blood from their eyes. It sounds like a myth you'd hear around a campfire, but it's a real defense. Horned lizards can increase blood pressure in the vessels around the eyes until tiny membranes rupture, sending a brief spray of blood outward. The shock can startle predators, and the taste may be unpleasant enough to make them reconsider. Nature has many weapons. Some are claws, some are teeth, some are sheer surprise. Life may have begun near deep-sea hydrothermal vents. We often imagine life beginning under sunlight. But in the deep ocean, there are places where sunlight has never touched, and still, ecosystems thrive. Around hydrothermal vents, the seafloor cracks open and releases mineral-rich water, hot and dark, like the planet's own breath. Here, microbes build a food web not from photosynthesis, but from chemosynthesis, turning chemical energy into life. Some hypotheses suggest environments like this could have been a cradle for early life, not a garden warmed by the sun, but a furnace-lit nursery in the deep. Starfish can regrow their limbs. Some can do even more than that. A starfish can regenerate a lost arm, rebuilding what was taken piece by piece. And in certain species, a single arm, if it contains part of the central disc, can sometimes regrow into a whole new starfish. A body that treats loss not as an ending, but as instructions for rebuilding. Platypuses lay eggs and nurse their young. They are mammals, and yet they don't follow the usual script. The platypus is a monotreme, an egg-laying mammal. It produces milk, but without nipples. The milk is secreted through skin and lapped up by the young. Males have venomous spurs, and the platypus hunts using electroreception, sensing the tiny electrical signals of prey beneath the water surface. It feels like nature stitched several worlds together and said quietly, yes, this too can work. Bats see with echoes. In the dark, They speak in ultrasonic calls and listen for what returns. With echolocation, a bat can read distance, shape, texture, mapping a room without light. The world becomes a sculpture of sound, flight guided by reverberation, as if darkness itself is just another kind of information. Venus flytraps count before they close. These plants don't snap shut at every false alarm. A Venus flytrap needs a certain number of touches within a short time before it triggers. This helps it avoid wasting energy on raindrops or drifting debris. It's not thinking the way we think, but it is measuring. It is filtering noise from meaning. Even a trap can be careful. Penguins propose with pebbles. In the wide cold where almost nothing seems soft, a small stone can become a love letter. Species like Adelie and Gentoo penguins offer pebbles as gifts and nesting material, tokens of effort, of intention. A tiny gesture held up against the enormity of ice and wind, as if to say, I chose you, and I brought something I can carry. Some birds can sleep while flying. They enter a state called unihemispheric slow-wave sleep, one half of the brain resting while the other stays awake enough to keep the body moving and alert. In this strange compromise, the bird keeps flying, keeps surviving, keeps going. Even sleep becomes adaptive. Even rest becomes a strategy. Your brain runs on small bursts of electricity. Tens of billions of neurons communicate through electrical impulses and chemical signals, weaving thought, memory, and emotion out of flickers you cannot see. And even when you sleep, the brain doesn't turn off. It changes rhythm. It moves through slow waves and dreaming storms, cleaning, sorting, stitching experience into meaning, like a quiet ocean under a dark sky. Cuttlefish are masters of camouflage. They can change color, pattern, even the apparent texture of their skin, using specialized pigment cells and reflective structures. They hide, they signal, they hunt. Sometimes it even seems like they play, testing the world with disguises, as if curiosity itself can ripple through the skin. Corals reproduce by the rhythm of the moon. On certain nights, under a particular moon, coral colonies release eggs and sperm in synchronized clouds, turning the ocean briefly into a drifting snowfall of possibility. Timing is everything in a vast sea. So they dance with the sky, a reproductive ritual guided by celestial clocks. Frogs use their eyes to help swallow. Evolution loves to reuse what already exists. Some frogs pull their eyes down into their skulls, creating pressure that helps push food down the throat. It's an elegant weirdness, a reminder that bodies are not designed like machines. They are edited over time, layered with solutions. Plants can warn each other through the air. When insects chew on leaves, some plants release volatile chemicals that drift on the breeze. Nearby plants can detect these signals and increase their defenses, producing bitter compounds, strengthening tissues, preparing for attack. A garden is not silent. It is filled with invisible messages, passing from leaf to leaf like whispers. Earthworms are engineers of the soil. They aerate it, mix layers, create nutrient-rich castings. They shape the ground beneath our feet in slow, constant work. Darwin himself emphasized how important earthworms are to the formation and renewal of soil. The planet's fertility depends in part on quiet bodies tunneling through dark. Giraffes sleep very little. In the wild, being large doesn't always mean being safe. Giraffes often nap in short bursts, sometimes standing, because vulnerability invites danger. Their biology is tuned for vigilance, built for a world where rest must be earned in small fragments. Some bacteria can break down certain plastics. Scientists have found microbes that produce enzymes capable of degrading peat, a common plastic. It's not a complete solution yet, not a simple fix for a global problem, but it's a hopeful direction. Even in our mess, nature searches for chemistry that can chew through the impossible. Arctic foxes change coats with the seasons, white in winter, brown-gray in summer, a living cloak that follows the calendar of survival. The body becoming landscape, so the predator and prey both have to look twice. The deep sea is like an alien planet. It is dark, cold, high pressure, yet full of strange, resilient life, including many organisms that glow with bioluminescence. It's a world where light is precious and often manufactured inside living bodies, where shapes look unfamiliar because the rules feel different down there. Some birds use tools. New Caledonian crows craft hooks. Egyptian vultures drop stones. Even small birds in certain places have been observed using objects to solve problems. Tool use isn't owned by humans. It emerges wherever intelligence meets necessity, and sometimes curiosity. Camels don't store water in their humps. Their humps store fat. Camels survive heat and dryness through efficient kidneys, dry feces, and the ability to let body temperature fluctuate to reduce sweating. It's a survival system that treats water like treasure, guarded with ruthless efficiency. Chicks talk to their mother before hatching. Inside the egg, the chick makes sounds. The mother responds. Siblings can respond too, coordinating timing so they hatch together. Even before seeing the world, they are already communicating, already a family listening in the dark. Some insects survive being frozen. They produce antifreeze compounds like glycerol, slow their metabolism to near stillness, and endure conditions that would destroy most life. Not dead, not alive in the usual way, waiting like a paused breath. Polar bears have black skin. Their fur looks white, but it's actually transparent and scatters light. Beneath that, black skin absorbs heat more efficiently. A layered design, reflect and conceal on the outside, capture warmth underneath. Some jellyfish can regenerate and clone in the polyp stage. And with Turritopsis dohrnii, the story goes further, reverting to a younger life stage and restarting the cycle again, like time itself, can be folded backward. Not immortality in the human sense, but a strange refusal to follow a one-way path. The human body emits an extremely faint light, not the kind you can see. A whisper of bioluminescence from biochemical reactions, so dim only ultra-sensitive cameras can detect it. It changes through the day, often stronger in the late afternoon. You glow quietly, without knowing, like a secret your body keeps. Some fish can walk on land. Mud skippers use fins to crawl over mud flats. Climbing perch can breathe air and survive out of water for long periods. They are evolutionary bridges, living reminders of how fluid the boundary can be between sea and shore. Fire ants can form floating rafts made of their own bodies. When floods arrive, they don't scatter. They knit themselves together, legs and jaws linking ant to ant, until they become a living raft that floats on the surface. Each individual grips the next, creating a woven structure that can flex with waves and current. A survival machine made entirely of life, and as that raft drifts, it carries the same lesson the planet has been repeating all night. Life does not only endure, It organizes, it improvises, it becomes architecture, chemistry, community, and miracle again and again. Quiet enough to let you relax, and strange enough to make the world feel new when you open your eyes.